We live in a reactive world. Someone cuts us off in traffic, we yell. A coworker disrespects us, we retaliate. Social media disagrees with us, we attack. But here's the truth. Reaction is easy. Mastery is not. Real strength is not in the comeback. Real power is not in the volume of your voice. It's in the quiet. The moment when you could explode, but you choose not to. That's power. Because the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to prove anything, the one who stays grounded when everything around them is shaking. Power doesn't come from how loud you speak, how many people listen to you, or how many situations you try to dominate. Real power comes from mastering the one thing you have absolute control over, yourself. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your energy, and your emotional reaction, the most powerful move you can make is to not react. To pause, to think, to choose. There is a misconception that power means having control over others. That being able to manipulate a situation or change someone's behavior gives you authority. But the truth is, control over others is temporary, fragile, and often built on fear. Control over yourself, on the other hand, is lasting. It's the kind of power that can't be taken from you. Not by circumstance, not by failure, not even by other people's opinions. Because no matter what happens around you, you decide what happens within you. It's not easy. Our first instinct when we're disrespected is to react. When we're misunderstood, we want to explain ourselves. When we feel threatened, we want to fight back. But every time you let someone or something outside of you dictate your emotional state, you've handed over your power. You've given a piece of yourself to a person who may not even be worth your energy. That's not strength, that's surrender. Surrendering to impulse, to ego, to insecurity. The moment you realize that you don't have to react is the moment you reclaim your power. You start seeing things differently. You begin to understand that not every battle is worth fighting. Not every comment needs a reply. And not every challenge deserves your focus. You rise above petty conflict because your energy is reserved for something greater. Your purpose, your growth, your peace. Mastering control over yourself means mastering the pause between what happens to you and how you respond. That space is everything. In that space, you make a choice. You can let anger decide, or fear, or ego, or you can choose wisdom, patience, and clarity. And the more you practice that pause, the more you train yourself to respond consciously rather than emotionally. That's self-leadership. That's real influence. You become trustworthy to yourself and to others. People start to notice that you don't get shaken easily. You don't lash out when things go wrong. You don't panic and discomfort. And because of that, they respect you. They may not understand your calm at first, but they'll feel your steadiness. Your presence becomes something people rely on, not because you control them, but because you've mastered the ability to control yourself. And here's the beauty of it. When you live from this place of self-control, you no longer need to prove your power. You don't need to seek validation, approval, or dominance. You operate from within. You're not swayed by noise. You're not moved by drama. You are anchored in who you are, and that is the highest form of strength. So if you're looking for real power, stop trying to control the world around you. Start with you. Control your thoughts. Control your emotions. Control your reactions. Because everything you want to build, whether it's leadership, trust, impact, or peace, starts from the inside out. Power lies in what you control. And what you control is you. Always. Reacting is easy. It's built into us. A survival mechanism from a time when threats were everywhere and hesitation could mean danger. Someone insults you and you feel anger. Someone disrespects you and you want to retaliate. This is instinct. It's fast, emotional, and automatic. But instinct is not intelligence. Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's useful, especially now, in a world that requires more thought than reflex, more understanding than retaliation. Reaction is a defense. It's the brain saying, protect yourself. But what if there's nothing to protect from? What if the threat is not real danger, but just discomfort? What if the challenge isn't physical survival, but emotional maturity? That's when instinct can fail us. Because reacting without thinking might feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely leads to long-term peace, progress, or power. That's where intelligence comes in. Non-reaction is not the absence of feeling, it's the presence of awareness. It means you felt the same urge to fight, to shout, to snap, but you chose not to. You observed the emotion without letting it control you. That choice, that moment of restraint, is intelligence in action. It's you stepping above the emotion and seeing the bigger picture. It's you realizing that not every provocation deserves your energy. It's knowing that your response should serve your growth, not just your ego. There's a difference between reacting to win the moment and responding to win the war. Reaction wants to be right. Non-reaction wants to be wise. Reaction is about impulse. Non-reaction is about intention. When you react, you give the situation power over you. When you choose non-reaction, you take your power back. So let's be clear, non-reaction doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It doesn't mean you stay silent forever. It means you respond when you decide to, not when your emotions demand it. You speak when you have clarity, not just emotion. You act from strength, not from fear. And that makes all the difference. Most of the chaos in our lives doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we react to what happened. A message, a comment, a mistake. It can all be neutral until we make it personal, until we react. Non-reaction allows us to create space between stimulus and response. In that space is freedom. The freedom to choose how we show up, what we say, and what we become in the process. People who practice non-reaction don't do it because they're weak. They do it because they've learned that emotions are like waves. They rise, they fall, and just like waves, they pass. If you can stand still long enough, you'll find your clarity. You'll be able to respond with truth. Not just tension, that's intelligence, not how fast you speak, but how wisely you think. Not how sharp your comeback is, but how still your mind can stay under pressure. It's not about proving yourself to others, it's about proving to yourself that you've grown. That you don't need to fight every battle, that silence can be strength, that stillness can be power. So next time you're triggered, ask yourself, is this worth my reaction, or is this an opportunity to rise above my instinct and operate from intelligence? Because every moment gives you that choice, to be controlled by emotion or to be guided by purpose. Reaction is easy. Non-reaction is mastery. Choose mastery. Every time. When something upsets you, the instinct is to respond immediately, to say something, to do something, to act in the moment. But that moment, more often than not, is when your judgment is clouded, you're emotional, you're in defense mode, you're not thinking clearly, you're just reacting. And when we react from that place, the decisions we make usually don't reflect our best thinking. They reflect our pain, our ego, or our fear. Non-reaction is not weakness. It's the pause. The pause between what happens and how you choose to respond. And in that pause lies your greatest strength, the ability to decide with intention rather than emotion. That space you create when you choose not to react immediately is where better decisions are born. Think of it like this. If your mind is a room, a reaction fills it with noise. There's no space to think because emotion is bouncing off the walls. But when you practice non-reaction, you open a window. You let the air in. You clear the room. You create a mental environment where reason can exist, where logic can sit beside emotion, and where clarity can finally enter. Most people rush to respond because they think fast action shows strength, but often it only shows impatience. The wisest people, the ones who consistently make strong, impactful decisions, are the ones who know when to wait. They don't get swept away by emotion. They let the first wave pass. They give themselves space. And in that space, they find answers that aren't driven by insecurity or impulse, but by values and long-term thinking. Non-reaction gives you time to ask better questions. Instead of how do I defend myself, you start asking what outcome do I want from this? Instead of how do I win this argument, you ask what does the situation really require from me? Those are two very different mindsets. One leads to short-term gratification, the other leads to long-term growth. Creating space through non-reaction also allows you to observe rather than assume. When you're quick to react, you often misread intentions. You assume the worst. You project your own insecurities onto someone else's words or behavior. But when you wait, you start to see more clearly. Maybe that person wasn't attacking you. Maybe they were struggling. Maybe that situation wasn't about you at all. Maybe your initial read was incomplete. The space you create doesn't just benefit you, it benefits your relationships. When you stop reacting, you stop escalating, you break the cycle of conflict, you set a new tone. People feel safer around you because they know you're not going to fly off the handle. They know you think before you speak, and that builds trust, it builds influence, it builds respect, and most importantly, non-reaction keeps you in alignment with who you want to be. It allows you to choose actions that match your principles, not just your emotions. Emotions come and go, but character is consistent. Every decision you make from a place of calm strengthens that character. So the next time something triggers you, a message, a mistake, a moment of conflict, remind yourself that your first reaction doesn't have to be your final response. You have time. You have space. Use it. Breathe. Reflect. Then decide. Better decisions come when you stop rushing, when you stop letting emotion run the show, when you honor the space between the problem and your response. That's where your power is. Not in how quickly you react, but in how wisely you choose. Negativity is a cycle. It feeds on reaction. Someone speaks to you with anger, you respond with more anger. Someone disrespects you, you snap back. Before long, the situation escalates, and what could have ended with one calm response becomes a chain of blame, bitterness, and resentment. This is how conflict grows. Not from a single spark, but from the fire that keeps getting fed. But what happens when one person refuses to feed that fire? What happens when you don't respond the way they expect? What happens when you pause, breathe, and choose not to mirror the negativity? You break the cycle. And in doing so, you take back your power. It's easy to match energy. That's what most people do. They reflect whatever is coming at them. If someone is rude, they're rude back. If someone criticizes them, they become defensive. But what takes real strength, real awareness, is the ability to not match that energy, to hold your ground without becoming what you're standing against. You don't fight darkness with more darkness. You turn on the light. That light is your ability to stay calm, to stay conscious, to stay rooted in who you are, not in how others treat you. When you practice non-reaction in the face of negativity, you're not avoiding the issue. You're choosing a different way to address it, one that doesn't pour more fuel on the fire. Negativity thrives in environments where reaction is constant. It needs someone to respond emotionally. It needs drama to stay alive. But the moment you stop playing the game, the energy shifts. You no longer give negativity a place to land. You interrupt the pattern, not just for yourself, but sometimes even for the other person. People often don't expect calm, they expect resistance. So when you choose composure over conflict, it disrupts their rhythm. Sometimes it forces them to look at their own behavior differently. Not always, but often enough to make a difference. Because nothing makes someone more aware of their own chaos than someone else's peace. But the real change happens inside of you. Every time you choose non-reaction, every time you let a negative comment pass without taking it personally, you grow stronger. You start to realize that you don't need to involve yourself in every argument. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you manage them. You observe them. You ask, is this worth my energy? And most of the time you'll realize it's not. Not because you're avoiding hard conversations, but because you're saving your energy for ones that actually matter. Breaking the cycle of negativity isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about choosing a higher response. It's about recognizing that your peace is more valuable than winning an argument. That your growth matters more than your ego. That silence, sometimes, is the most powerful statement you can make. And over time, this way of being changes you. You become less reactive, more reflective, less driven by emotion, more grounded in principle. You start to feel lighter, freer, more focused. You create a life where negativity can knock, but it never gets in, because the door stays closed, because you've built a different standard. So the next time negativity shows up through a person, a situation, or even your own thoughts, pause. Don't react. Don't fight back just to prove a point. Choose calm. Choose clarity. Choose to be the one who ends the cycle, not the one who keeps it going. That's how change begins. That's how you win, not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself. When you choose not to react, people often misunderstand it. They see silence as weakness. They see your calm as passivity. But that's because they don't understand the power it takes to stay composed when everything around you demands a response. Non-reaction isn't the absence of strength. It's the presence of control. It's not about being passive. It's about being so grounded in yourself that you don't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, to argue, to defend, choosing to be still is a statement. It's a presence that says, I am in charge of myself. That's power. Not in the form of dominance, but in the form of restraint. When someone pushes you and you don't push back, not because you're afraid, but because you've already mastered the space within you, you send a very different message. You're not ignoring the moment. You're elevating above it. Non-reaction isn't silence born from fear. It's silence chosen with intention. It's the clarity to know that not everything requires your input. That not every moment needs your voice. Sometimes your stillness is more powerful than anything you could say. And the world notices. People begin to sense that you're different. Not because you dominate the conversation, but because you don't feel the need to. There's a confidence in non-reaction. A quiet confidence that says, I don't need to win this moment to win in life. You don't need to have the last word. You don't need to prove you're right. You're secure enough to walk away. You're wise enough to wait. You're aware enough to know that real power is patient. And it's not just about how others see you. It's about how you experience life. When you stop reacting to every little thing, you stop being pulled in 100 directions. You stop living at the mercy of circumstances. You become the center of your own gravity. That's presence. That's power. When people try to trigger you and you don't bite, they're left with their own noise. You don't absorb it, you don't carry it, you don't return it. That makes you unshakable. And in a world full of noise, those who are unshakable are rare. They stand out, not by force, but by essence. So let them call your silence weakness. Let them misread your stillness. You know better. You know that non-reaction is not hiding, it's leading. You're not avoiding the moment, you're mastering it. Because true power doesn't come from overpowering others, it comes from ruling yourself. And those who master the art of non-reaction don't need to be seen, their presence is already felt. Influence isn't built in a moment. It's not about saying the right thing at the perfect time or commanding attention with volume. Real lasting influence is built slowly, through consistency, trust, and emotional intelligence. And one of the most overlooked yet powerful habits that creates long-term influence is mastering non-reaction. When people think of influence, they often picture charisma, persuasion, or confidence. But those traits lose their edge if they're fueled by reactivity. A person who constantly reacts, who's quick to anger, easily offended, or always trying to defend themselves, may have presence in the moment, but they lack the emotional steadiness that others can rely on. And reliability is the foundation of true influence. When you master non-reaction, you become a steady force in a world full of volatility. You no longer get pulled into drama, provoked by small-minded comments, or distracted by every emotional shift in the room. You operate from a place of inner control. That control doesn't silence your voice, it amplifies your credibility. Because people begin to see you as someone who doesn't just speak when it's convenient, but speaks when it matters. And when you do speak, they listen. Not because you're loud, but because your words come from clarity, not impulse. Influence isn't about having power over others. It's about inspiring trust. And nothing builds trust more than emotional consistency. People want to follow those who don't get rattled every time the wind changes direction. They want to work with leaders who don't overreact under pressure. They want to be around someone who brings calm to chaos, not someone who adds fuel to every fire. Non-reaction creates space. Space for better responses. Space for clearer thinking. Space for more intentional decisions. Over time, this space becomes your advantage. You make fewer emotional mistakes. You build better relationships. You navigate tension without adding to it, and people notice. They may not always say it out loud, but they recognize that your presence is different, that you bring peace, not panic. Thought, not noise. This doesn't mean you don't have emotions. It means you're not ruled by them. It means you know how to pause, reflect, and respond rather than explode. And that pause is powerful. It sends a message to everyone around you that you don't need to prove yourself through reaction. You prove yourself through your ability to stay grounded and purposeful even when things get messy. The impact of this discipline grows over time. The more consistently you show up with composure, the more people begin to look to you in moments of uncertainty. They lean on your calm. They seek your perspective. That's influence, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. There's a quiet authority that comes from mastering non-reaction. It says, I control myself, and because of that, I can lead others. It says, I don't chase power, I attract respect. It allows you to influence not just through your actions, but through your energy. People trust you because they can predict you. They know you won't lose yourself in pressure or lose your temper when things don't go your way. In the short term, reaction may feel powerful. It may give you the last word, but in the long run, non-reaction gives you something far greater, lasting influence. The kind that doesn't fade when the room quiets down. The kind that doesn't need attention to be effective. It's earned through restraint, built through presence, and solidified through consistency. So if you want to lead, if you want to influence, if you want to leave an impact that lasts, start with yourself, master non-reaction, because the most influential people in the room are rarely the loudest.